Well, the temperatures are finally starting to cool down a little bit, so let's talk about some recipes that might feel a little like fall comfort food. Hey my friends, welcome back to my channel, and welcome if you're new here. If you are new, my name is Melissa, and I'm here today to show you 3 different recipes using ground beef that just kind of has that cozy fall comfort food feel. And I want you to watch all the way to the end and tell me which of the 3 that I show you do you think is my favorite, and leave it in the comments below. So let's go ahead and get into the kitchen and let me show you what I'm cooking. This first dish that I'm using ground beef for is basically a deconstructed stuffed bell pepper. I love the smell of stuffed bell peppers, but I just can't seem to get into cutting my bell pepper up and eating it while it's like crunchy. I don't know. So I found this recipe and it's super easy. I actually made it in another video as well. I will link that video in the description box so that you can see exactly how I made it. But basically you brown your ground beef, you add the minced garlic, you add the red and green bell pepper and the diced onions. You stir it around, cook it until the vegetables are tender. Then you're gonna add a can of green chilies as well as 2 cans of Rotel. I did not drain, the recipe doesn't say to drain any of it, so I didn't drain any of it, but you add that in there and you add 1 cup of rice, and I always use jasmine rice because we love jasmine rice. Then I add 1 cup of beef consomme. You can use beef broth, but I really like the flavor of beef consomme. Then you add 1 teaspoon of cumin as well as 1 tablespoon of chili powder. Once you have all of that in there, you just stir it up real good, and after you stir it, you want to make sure the rice gets covered and mixed in with all of that as good as possible. But once you stir that all together, once it starts bubbling, you are going to turn the heat down to a low simmer and you cover it, and you're going to cook it until the rice is tender. Once the rice is tender, which is about 25 minutes, 20 minutes, you are going to stir it all real good. Make sure all that rice is in there real good. Then you're going to add about a tablespoon or 2 of fresh cilantro and stir that up. And once you have that stirred up, then you're going to cover it with shredded cheese. You can use whatever cheese you like. I happen to have the Colby Jack, which is usually what I use. But cover it with the Colby Jack cheese. You put the lid back on it and you let it stay covered until the cheese is melted. And this is what you come up with. And it is so delicious. It gives me that stuffed bell pepper without the bell pepper, or at least without the whole bell pepper. Tonight for dinner we are having hamburger steak and gravy. And for these, just to make my life a little easier, I buy the ground beef already in patties, but I get them in they're 1/4 pound patties each. But in order to make enough for the 3 of us to have a little extra if we want to take any for lunch the next day, or if we just want a little extra, I break off a little bit of each patty and then I smash the patties real thin because they do cook up and get small and fat, and I'd rather them be a little less small and fat. So I press them with some wax paper, and I'm going to season them. For the seasoning, I just use salt and pepper, and then of course I love using this roasted garlic and herb by Weber. So I sprinkle that pretty generously. This way I don't have to use garlic powder. It seasons it really good. But anyway, I'm going to let the first side brown a little bit, and then I'm going to flip them over and I'll put the seasoning on the other side. I should have put it first, but I didn't, but that's okay. But I'm going to go ahead and get all these patties browned up, and then I'm going to, because the pot is small, I'm going to have to take them out when they're done and then put more in. But once I get them all cooked up, not cooked completely, but cooked, browned on both sides, then I'm going to put them back in here, and then I will continue. Do you see how they shrink up? I mean, it's I think 80-20, so obviously they're going to, but that's why I like to smash them, just so they're a little flatter, because I do know they shrink up and get fat. Anyway, gonna keep cooking. All right, I have got everything browned on both sides, and now I'm gonna drain this juice. I'm trying to keep my arm from totally being in the camera. Anyway, I'm gonna drain the grease and then continue. Now I'm gonna put the hamburger patties back in the skillet. I'm gonna cover it with some veggies, some frozen veggies, and then I'm gonna put this beef gravy, and just to have a little bit more, I add a little water to it and shake it up real good, and pour that in there. I am also going to periodically through the cooking time, I will take the lid off and just kind of stir the hamburger patties around, just to make sure that they all get to kind of cook in that gravy. And I do let this cook. This is one of those meals, if I'm home all day, or if I have time, you know, with a couple hours in the afternoon, this is one of those meals that I like to start early and let it cook for a while, because the longer it cooks, the more tender it gets. And this is what it looks like. You can serve it with any sides that you like. We just had it with mashed potatoes. Use some of that gravy and some air fryer carrots. This last dish is a creamy tomato and ground beef tortellini. And I'm just gonna start by browning my ground beef. After it starts browning and after I've started chopping it up a bit, I add some frozen veggies. This is just an onion, bell pepper, and celery blend. And I just keep chopping up the ground beef, and I'm gonna cook this until the ground beef is just about done and the veggies are tender. Then I'm gonna start adding seasoning. I just add some oregano, and I will have the recipe linked in the description box. And I did change it up just a little bit, but anyway, you add the oregano, you add some garlic, and the recipe has all of the measurements, but I just kind of put however much I want to put. I add some minced onion, and then I add some salt and pepper to taste. Probably not as much of the salt, but once I have all of that in there, then you just stir it up real good and you let that cook until the ground beef is completely done. And then you're going to want to drain the grease off of the ground beef. After you drain the grease, you are going to chop up an 8-ounce block of cream cheese, and you're going to add that in. You're going to let it cook until that cream cheese has melted, and I did cover it just to kind of help speed along the melting process. And I went in a couple of times and just stirred and kind of mixed real well until all of that cream cheese was nice and melted. Once that has melted, then you're going to add whatever marinara or spaghetti sauce you want to add This is a jar that I got from Sam's, and so it's a 48 or 45 ounce jar, and you're not going to use all of it. The recipe calls for, I think, 28 ounces. I'm probably using a little bit more than 28 ounces because this is where the recipe differs. Stir that up, mix it real well, but the recipe calls for you to cook the tortellini by itself, like cook it on its own, and then add it to the sauce, but you'll see that I'm gonna add the tortellini straight to the pasta. I got this package from Sam's as well, and it's a 48 ounce package. The recipe only calls for 12 ounces of tortellini, so I only use about half of one of the packages. The package comes in a set of 2, so I only use about half of one. And you just mix that up real well, and like I said, I use a little bit of extra sauce just to help cook that tortellini. And once I get it all stirred up real good, all the tortellini is covered, then I just put the lid on and I let it cook on a low simmer until that tortellini is finished cooking. I let this cook for probably about 20 to 25 minutes. Once the tortellini is done and tender, then you are just going to add shredded cheese to the top. The recipe does call for mozzarella, but I'm using the cheddar jack because I always have it on hand. Now this does say to cook it, I guess put it in a casserole dish and bake it in the oven so that your cheese gets, I guess, maybe a little more cooked. But I just put the lid on and let the lid stay on until all of the cheese was melted, and that works just fine for me. The less dishes I can use, the better. So I just put the lid on and let it cook like this on low until that cheese is melted, and this is what it looks like. And you can see it bubbling, that cheese is nice and melty. So my husband is helping himself to a plate, and this was really delicious. All right, there are the 3 recipes. So now, what do you think was my favorite? I will let you know that while the hamburger steak and gravy is always something that is very popular in my house, and the stuffed bell pepper one pot dish is really, really good, I think my favorite is the cheesy ground beef tortellini meal. I love anything spaghetti, so that just kind of has that special kind of comfort food feel for me, and that one is my favorite. So if you guessed that one, then you are the winner. But anyway, I want to thank you so much for stopping by and checking out these recipes. I hope you enjoyed them, and if you're new to my channel and you like all things homemaking, whether it is meal ideas, home decor, home organization, shopping hauls, then I would love it if you would consider clicking that subscribe button, click the bell button so you don't miss any of my videos, and everybody give this video a big thumbs up. And if you are looking for more kind of fall comfort food ideas, then check out the box you see on the screen right now, and I will see you next time. Bye.